won't know until they do. But then after that, then it would go potentially back to the Supreme Court for the question would be posed again, and the Supreme Court would have to decide for him. And so that could have affected the Supreme Court's decision how quickly the appeals court was taking this up. And just to be clear, this needed 5 votes from the justices, right? We don't know if there were any dissents or not. None of that was made public.
It wasn't. It was just this one line that they were denying the petition at this time. And they do know and they do see that the DC Circuit was moving very fast with this appeal. So we just don't know what the thinking was behind the scenes or what the vote
And
was.
then the big question is, what would this mean for the trial potentially? I mean, it's still on the books, right? But whether it actually happens in March is another question.
It's on the books for March 4th. Everything in preparation for the trial is on hold, although there was a lot already done to prepare for that trial. Evidence was turned over, there were other rulings made by the trial judge, but it is on hold until this is essentially figured out by an appeals court. This is the one issue that really can go up on appeal before Trump would have to go to trial. There are other things where he's trying to toss the case because of the law that he's charged under. Those things are not going to be appealable initially. The immunity question really does have to get figured out. And, you know, once it is figured out, there's a couple things that the trial court has to do still before trial takes place. And so that date could move, but it all depends on how fast all of the appeals process plays out here.
The bottom line is the blow to Jack Smith and a win for Donald Trump for now, at least. All right, Kaylin Collins, thank you so much. I'm going to bring in retired federal judge and Harvard senior law lecturer Nancy Gertner, also with us, CNN political analyst and New York Times senior political correspondent Maggie Haberman, and CNN legal analyst Karen Friedman-Agnifilo. So, Judge Gertner, I want to start with you. What does it say to you that the Supreme Court decided not to take this up directly as special counsel Jack Smith had requested?
I have 2 feelings about it. One is that you understand that in 19 cases, the Supreme Court under Trump took up an immediate appeal on abortion cases, on student loan, on affirmative action, cases that were far less weighty than this, on the one hand. On the other hand, the lack of a dissent suggests that the Supreme Court may think that the D.C. Circuit is moving fast enough. They have an oral argument scheduled for January 9th, and they're waiting for that decision. And then they could move expeditiously. They may want the cover of the district court, of the district's D.C. Circuit decision before they move. In other words, they've already seen a court of appeals that is moving quickly, so this doesn't necessarily indicate that they're not going to take it up expeditiously. It's already expeditiously being taken up in the D.C. Circuit. That's one reason why there may be no dissent here.
Just to follow up on that, so basically there was no dissent made public. There could have been dissents, right? But we don't know whether there was because they weren't made public, correct?
Right, but in a case as important as this, you would have seen dissents to the denial of cert. That's not unusual. And so one theory here, and it's only a theory, is that the apparent unanimity may mean the D.C. Circuit is already moving quite quickly, and they'd be willing to go once the D.C. Circuit makes its decision. And if it makes its decision and says the stay is lifted, then the trial before Judge Chutkan can go ahead. They'd have to move again for a stay before the Supreme Court. In other words, there are a number of possibilities here that still could suggest an expeditious decision, even if we don't see it right now.
Okay, I finished one.
Not really surprised, but it's the name of the game here for Trump, though, is to delay. He does not want this case to go to trial. And so a little bit of time, even if it moves expeditiously, don't forget this case this time period could go into March 24th, which is when the Alvin Bragg, Stormy Daniels case is scheduled to go. So any amount of time that this case gets pushed, that case is scheduled to go March 24th. And so then this case would have to go back to of course you're right in the middle of the election. So any amount of delay here is actually practically a win for Trump.
So Maggie, the former president, almost immediately began fundraising off of this decision. How much does this team see this as a win?
Okay, it's as you just said. They are playing a game of inches.
inches, and those inches are what can get them as close to the election or past the election as possible, because a number of Trump's advisors have been very clear about this. He will, if he wins, order the Justice Department to drop these cases, and so he does not want this case to go to trial. It's not good for any nominee of a major party to be sitting in court during the general election. And so, yes, they view this as a win, and they would say it was a win, frankly, even if it wasn't. It was very good for fundraising for them, but I don't think we know exactly what this means. We don't know how long the delay this is. There's still a number of questions.
Just to follow up, Maggie, you did a lot of reporting at the end of Trump's term about whether he was going to pardon himself, and we never get asked about it. I wonder if, in your reporting, if you get any sense that Trump regrets that he didn't pardon himself at the very end, and whether it's something that he would consider if he did win, and obviously isn't, he doesn't go to trial before.
I haven't heard that he's voicing any regrets about that, Pam, although it's certainly possible that he is. Remember, it's not a question that has clear litigation around it. There would be court challenges if he had pardoned himself. That would be the case if he did it again, which is why I've heard from multiple people the likelier avenue that he would take if he won again would be to have charges dropped against him by the DOJ that he would then control. But he never rules out anything, as you know. He always considers everything up until the last minute.
Yeah, that's very true. So, Judge Gertner, how do you see the appeals court responding to this?
Well, I think that Judge Hutskin's order was really very solid, that there's no way that a former president can escape criminal liability for what he did in office, that it's fair to say that whatever he did with respect to the January 6th allegations, he was doing it not in his official duty, not within the perimeters of his job, but rather insofar as he was conducting a campaign. And the second argument, which had to do that somehow he was following his impeachment trial, is double jeopardy.
1 second, guys.
Laughable. So I think that the chances are the D.C. Circuit will affirm Judge Chutkan, and there's a possibility that the Supreme Court would simply say yes after that. We really don't know. What they're going to do when
politicization weighs into the court's calculus at this point?
Look, one question that remains unanswered is, will Clarence Thomas, for example, recuse himself from this case the way many Democrats have called for his recusal because of the appearance of politics? There should never be politics play. There's a separation of powers for a reason, right? And so politics should never play or be a factor at all in the judge's decision. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump is running for president, and whether or not the American people get to know a verdict in this particular case before they vote for an election largely will depend on what the courts do and whether we get to have a trial, whatever the outcome is, one way or another.
Maggie, back to you. You were talking about how the Trump campaign just jumps on any incremental development, right? I mean, they did today with another small case out of West Virginia, acting like it's this massive deal. Obviously these cases tend to fire up the base. We've seen the polling after that. It seems like his popularity only rises. But do you think the sheer magnitude of the charges, the court dates, and the appearances may end up having a negative impact on him in the general if he wins in a primary?
I think it's important to remember that as much as we all pay a lot of attention to him, I don't think that the general election electorate is paying that much attention to him or what is happening. I don't think they're that tuned in to the specifics around these trials or the charges that he's facing. And I just don't think this is a good fact set for him. I don't think any of this is helpful to him. If we assume that the two trials that are likeliest to go ahead next year, if they do, are the Alvin Bragg case and the January 6th Washington case, his folks consider the Alvin Bragg case not to be as much of a problem for him because they think that they can convince folks that it looks cheaper than the others. The fact set around what happened in the lead up to January 6th and his efforts to subvert the election results is going to involve a parade of his former and in some cases current advisors showing up in court to testify that he, in many instances was told that he had lost and about other things that he was saying. That's just not going to be helpful. Now, again, who knows where the world will be in 6 months? But no, what is helpful to him in a primary is not helpful to him necessarily in a general election.
Important context there. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a great holiday weekend. Thanks for being with us tonight. Well, up next, Michigan Secretary of State on the newly revealed phone recording of the former president after the 2020 election, pressuring officials there to reject his losing result in the state's biggest county. And then later, how the southern border is, as one official put it, near a breaking point.
Just kidding.
Pagkatapos niya ito pag-isipan sa maraming taon. Nag-open up siya tungkol sa kanyang recent procedure sa isang Instagram post noong December 15, 2023. Caption niya sa post, "I say do what makes you happy. After so many years of contemplating, last month I finally decided to do it. Wala nang nakatigil. Now you knows." Lani Misalucha, sa isang concert series na ginawa niya kasama si Boris at Amon, ibinahagi ni Lani sa mga manonood ang isang clip mula sa 1996 Metro Pop Songs Festival kung saan i-perform niya ang kantang Ang Iitigin Ay Ikaw.
So I don't know how to draw bacon here.
Sinabi ng Asian sa audience na i-adjust sa mga ito ang kanilang expectation. Noong naturang clip ay mula pa 1996 at iba pa kanyang